Mexican Bug with an old Formula Vee car and put dirt tires in the back. You get Project Frogger. Does it make any sense? No. Is it fun? Yes. On this new project, I'm going to be using this Mexican Bug Drivetrain, which is a 1994 Volkswagen Bug, and runs 4-lug wheels. I want to run 5-lug wheels because the front end is a link pin on the chassis I'm using, which already has 5-lug drums on it. So I yanked off the 5-lug rear drums. I'm going to see if they fit this Mexican Beetle transaxle. Now, one thing that I noticed right off as soon as I took off the wheel, you could tell the quality of workmanship here. First off, a nail is a cotter pin, perfectly fine. Then the bolt that holds this on is torqued pretty tight. Usually you need a pretty good breaker bar and some good leverage to do this. This one's finger tight, so that doesn't bode well. The whole drum moves in and out. Should be easier to remove though, so bonus. Let's get out our big leverage to unscrew that. I mean, seriously, tightening a bolt, how hard is it? Well, doing it right is hard. The brakes are nicely saturated with oil. That lubricates them well, because that's what you want, is lubrication on your brakes. Because I have a feeling there's an oil seal issue here too, being this all smells like gear lube. These are actually the old tires from the CJ3B you see me working on. They just recently got new ones. That's what came off. I only had 2 that held air. I need precisely 2 rear tires for traction on a 2-wheel drive car. So, there they go. Done. Placed with the motor. Got the motor and transmission into the chassis here. Now, normally the Bug motor is in the back, it's rear-engined. In this, it's switched over to a mid-engine position, so the motor is in front of the transmission, which is great for weight balance. Problem is, this doesn't know which way it's facing. So right now, I have 4 gears that way, and 1 gear that way. So 4 reverse, 1 forward, which is a problem. So in order to fix that, we have an option on these VW transaxles that is kind of neat. You can change their direction of rotation. All you do is take the ring gear out with the differential, spin it around, install it on the other side, and it goes the other way. So that is going to be handy. That way we can go forward. Let's let that grip on the pan a little. 1 differential assembly. Now these shims right here are what set the side-to-side position of this ring gear. Now the important thing with flipping this ring and pinion over is not the pinion depth, because that stays the same. It's the side to side positioning of the ring gear. Now I put a pin in a pilot hole on the pinion, so I will know where the center line of that pinion is, and I measured from the outside of the case to that center line. And by doing that, I found out that it's within 1/1000th of an inch on center. So as long as I take the shim packs, flip them side to side the way they were, so the ring gear side keeps the same shims it had, this thing should be set up for the gears perfectly, within 1/1000. This is our differential and ring gear. These are the shims on either side that position it. I'm just going to go with exactly the way it was and flip the whole thing over, because it looks like the pinion is dead on center. Make sure that you take the cover that went on the side with the ring gear along with it, because that also positions it. That depth isn't the same on either one of them. They're pretty close, but they're not exactly the same. So I'm just going to make sure I have the right parts go to the right side and flip everything the same way. Now, when I got this chassis, it came with a bunch of pieces of random square tubing cut off. One of the pieces looks like it came from here. Right here, it would connect and stiffen the chassis, and it looks like they cut it out to take the motor out. Problem is, it won't fit anymore. This chassis was originally designed for a 1200, which has a single port manifold, so it's a lot smaller. This cast aluminum dual port one takes up too much room, so I can't actually put the structural member there where it's supposed to be. So I made up another one. It's a little longer, and I'm going to attach it to the outside of the chassis and go ahead and bolt it on. That way, if I need to remove the motor, I can unbolt it. We'll see how that does on flex. If it flexes too much, I'll just weld it on too. But at least this will let me put this thing on the ground. Now that I've got the motor in this car, I've got to figure out an exhaust. Now, mid-engine exhausts are available, but really expensive, and I don't do expensive. So what I bought was an old used TP header. My thought is, normally they face out the back. I'm just going to spin it around so it faces the other way. Theoretically, no problem. However, I found a problem. The bent tube length is different depending on which end it is. If you spin it around, the tubes hit things like the generator and stuff like that. So I have to do something about that. Luckily, this is old and used, so it's damaged. I gotta fix it already. What I'm gonna do is I am going to cut off the smashed bits of tube, cut off the other bits of tube, and then re-weld them all back together in the new orientation so it can face backwards. Well, I'm getting down to the fun stuff, hooking up controls and getting Project Frogger ready to run. I got the clutch hooked up, and normally with the engine pointing in the back like it did in the Volkswagen, the cable pulls the clutch lever forward with the pedal. Of course, I turn the thing around. So the cable has to go the other way. I figured we'll just go with a little pulley here, some cable clamps, a little extra, all the way to the clutch actuator lever. So now that'll be perfect. Hopefully it holds up. If not, I'll do something better. Then I have the throttle cable, same issue. In a Volkswagen, pulled in a straight line, I got to do a U-turn. So I found some bicycle cables lying around. So what I've done is run the bicycle cable with a cable clamp to the tube on the Volkswagen with the hose clamp to the carburetor. And then that loops around and goes, I would say that it goes to the pedal, but it doesn't. It wasn't long enough. So it goes to the side of the chassis here. Then I've got some baling wire going to the pedal. So when you hit the gas, we got a throttle pedal. Also, mint. Sure, there'll be no problems with that one at all. Now I'm on to brakes, because this thing's gonna need brakes. I've got the brake cylinder in, right there. I've got lines hooked up on either side. We've got some leaks, which I'm okay with. I gotta make an actuating rod. This one is the master cylinder a little further away, so I had to make 2 sets of coupler nuts. In order to space this out enough to make this work. So I'm going to try hooking this to the pedal, to the master cylinder, and see if we actually get some brakes. I've got something that resembles brakes. Floor, brakes. So 3 pumps, and there's some brakes in there. You do 5, it's halfway decent. So, yeah, I'm going to call that totally done. I just relearned an important lesson. When building a project car like this, sometimes things don't go as planned. Now, let me show you where I'm at. Motor's in, I just finished up the exhaust, working on the throttles in, the clutches in, working on the brakes, getting all the final stuff ready to go. Figured I need a battery somewhere. So my plan was to stuff the battery somewhere behind the seat. So I had to put a seat in there. So grabbed a seat. Cheapo, looks like it was off a cafeteria chair, but I figure that'll get me the placement I need. It looks like there is plenty of room for a small battery. So I've got a place for a battery. My shift lever's in. My pedals are all there. My steering wheel's in. This is where the lesson comes in place. You gotta try sitting in it first. Let me show you how that goes. Getting in. So far, so good. Grab the exhaust. No problem. So far, everything looks okay. I am physically in the vehicle. Now, I go to shift. Shifter's down here. My leg either hits the steering wheel or the shifter. It's not going to work well. Anywhere comfortable, I'm laying on top of the shifter. So I can't shift and steer at the same time. Pedals. First off, my foot hits the sway bar. I can get rid of that. That's no problem. Then, go a little further, press the gas pedal. My foot covers both the gas pedal and the brake pedal. So I press both at the same time. There is no way I can fit my foot next to the brake pedal without hitting it. So, yeah. Then the clutch I can do with my toe. That's almost reasonable. It's weirdly positioned way over that way. Totally uncomfortable, but possible. But the brake, now I can't press that brake pedal without my knee hitting the steering wheel. So that, yeah, this thing is terrible. And I just lost a lot of motivation on this project. So if I can't drive it, I have issues. So I'm going to have to even make an attempt at this. I don't know. I think I have to move the steering wheel. I have to move the shift lever. I have to, I don't know what I'm going to do about the gas pedal. Maybe make a new one that puts me way over here. Yeah, it probably would work. So got to modify the gas pedal, got to modify the steering, got to modify the shifter, and it's still hideously uncomfortable. I'm okay with that because I'm not going to be driving for very long. This is for a little quick blast, and then I get out and run away. So anyway, something to think about. Sit in your car before you finish building it. After last night's disappointment with not fitting in the car or being able to drive it, I decided I needed a little motivation. At times like that, I find I often have a tendency to stop working on the project, roll it outside, start on something else, and then years later, it's still not finished. But I'm going to get this thing running. So I needed to give myself a little bit of a boost so that I kept going. Now you may have noticed I've been calling this project Frogger, and other than the green color, it doesn't really seem to be very frog-like. Well, the reason I've been doing that is I had an idea before I started this. I saw the Volkswagen with its nice big headlights and its big round speedometer, and I was thinking if I could make a gauge pod dashboard thing that had the speedometer and the headlight all in one, I could mount two of those, use the other gauges on the other side, maybe oil pressure or tachometer, and make it look like eyes. And it's going to end up being like frog eyes. So I figure I better do that part so I start seeing the end a little better. So I hopped on the old 3D printer. And made myself some adapters. And I went out to the scrap bin, found some old plastic pipe. Used to say clearance 8 feet 5 inches. Clearly no one needs that. And I'm going to put these adapters in. Had to do them half because that's all my 3D printer could do. Couldn't travel the whole thing. Drop those in place here. Drop the headlight bucket, or the whole headlight assembly, in there. We're going to have eyes. And then I made some matching ones for the rear for the speedometer. So it's going to be a pod with the gauge, the headlight, and it'll look like a frog. So that's my goal. So I'm going to work on that instead of fixing things that actually matter for driving the car. Because, you know, why not? It's my car. There, front end stability, gone. Perfect. Let's get that baling wire back in place. Perfect. Well, I've got Project Frogger pretty much factory perfect. Let me show you some of the features. We have front tires, leak air. The front wheel cylinders, the bleeders on both of them are broken off, so I can't get the air out of the system, and the brakes are really spongy. They work. It feels like about 3-5 pumps into it, we have something. We have a reservoir zip tied on, so that's secure. We have leaking in the brake cylinder. We have front tie rod isn't exactly tight. I couldn't get that bolt to either tighten or loosen, so I figured it's staying. We got a headlight that's not hooked up. We have got a seat and a floorboard. See? Floorboard and a seat. So, ignition switch, hook those two together. We have a gas tank secured properly with factory-like fasteners. We have the battery. It's got cables on it, so it won't go anywhere too far. We have a starter button so it can start from inside. Fuel line, air cooled. We have wire nuts, totally secure. We have tires that hold air. We have the pulley clutch system. We've got nice connectors on our starting system. The motor leaks oil, the transmission leaks oil, the gas tank leaks. I mentioned the brakes leak already. So let's take it for a ride. Need some brake work. Well, it's obvious that the most important thing to work on Project Frogger is the brakes. So I got a tachometer and an oil pressure gauge, and I'm going to install those. Like the speedometer, I've got another piece of tubing. I've got a holder for the headlight on one side, and then I went and printed up some pieces for the gauges. Now I have one for my tachometer, one for my oil pressure gauge. Had to make them in two pieces because of the size of the printer. One trick if you're doing that is make some studs in one feature, some holes in the other that line up, so when you put them together they lock in place and you get your alignment pretty good. You're pretty close there. In my case it's perfectly fine. If you felt like it, you could sand and fill that to make it perfect, but I'm not doing that. Now, got these locked together. I've got an oil pressure gauge. I found an old one. Doesn't go below 5 psi, so I'll never run out of oil pressure. I've got a tachometer off eBay stuck at almost 8,000 RPM, so this motor's going to rip. Drop these in place here. I'll attach them from the back later. Drop the whole thing on. Boom. Gauges. Now that I got the important stuff done, I'm going to do a little bit with those brakes. I have a line here. I'm going to bleed it at that because I can't actually undo the bleeders since they're snapped off and rusted solid. So hopefully by undoing that line I'll be able to get enough air out to get something here. So we'll just do a little bleeding and hope it works. I figure with the way the brakes usually don't work, this probably isn't the best ignition switch to cut it off quickly. So found some old burned up trailer wiring. There's a good section in here, so I'll have some good wire. Some old switches I had lying around, and we're going to have ignition and start, all like, you know, mounted somewhere properly. It's getting a little fancy here. Even going to have a switch for my starter that's attached to the vehicle. I don't know if we'll be able to handle this level of luxury. Time for a situation update on Project Frogger. I've got the ignition, like perfect, factory fresh. We have on off, start, and when you turn it on, it does fancy things. Now, I also have the battery secured. It's still on the floorboard, and we have a tie down now, a ratcheting one at that. So that's not going anywhere at all. I have wires run to the starter that use the appropriate connector, not even an alligator clip. And it's, you know, pretty much new at this point. I did try bleeding the brakes some more. Couldn't get all the air out of them, but It generally has, the first pump has some brakes there. I'm not sure how good they work. They don't seem to stop the front tires at all, and the rear ones are covered in oil, so it might be a little sketchy, but it should be better than before. So it's ready for a drive. One wheel locked up. I think my baling wire is coming loose in the throttle. Well, seems to do things. Now I just need a bigger place to drive. Well, I'm out here with Project Frogger. I figure if the brakes don't work well, drive somewhere you don't need brakes. So we're out in the middle of the desert here. Well, I'm pretty happy about this project. My goal was to take something abandoned in the woods and make it drive again, and I got that done. Now, the test drive didn't go without problems. I never could get it into second gear. Throttle linkage kept falling apart on me, so I never really got full throttle. And broke a suspension part of the header came off. You know, minor stuff like that. Oh, and the brakes. But overall, I'm happy. It ran, it drove. When the throttle worked, it was fast. And a few little touch-ups here and there, and this thing will really go. But I'm going to move on to another project for now, mothball this for a little bit, get back to it later. So I've got other things in the works.